Tensions are bubbling under between Netanyahu's government and the Palestinian Authority. But with the Muslim holy month of Ramadan approaching, a period in time known for its rise in tensions, there is one last-ditch attempt to turn down the heat and stop everything from boiling over. The Aqaba summit is being convened in Jordan to try and help the de-escalation between the Israeli and Palestinian counterparts after a series of IDF raids in the West Bank and Palestinian attacks on Israeli citizens and soldiers has left many dead on both sides. They will be joined by representatives from the US and Egypt, both of whom have condemned the escalation of violence. This comes on a day in which 2 Israelis were killed in an attack at the Hawara checkpoint near Nablus in the northern West Bank, for which Israel has already responded by announcing the death penalty for terrorists and with further punishments set to arise. But with an Israeli government which has vowed to crack down brutally on terror attacks, and terrorists justifying their attacks by blaming the Israeli government, are we stuck in a never-ending cycle of violence? And if so, is the diplomatic method the best way to get some kind of progress? Can Israel or the PA be convinced to stand down, and if so, who will be the first to blink? Are we heading towards a third intifada? What will be the impact of the Aqaba summit?
So let's get to it, gentlemen. What will be the impact of the Aqaba summit? As always, we begin with our quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we pick up the conversation from there. So, Mr. Sinijlawi, please take the lead.
This summit has been irrelevant from the beginning, and it has proven today that it's irrelevant. While they are convening, there was action on the ground. And even after the attack, now the Israeli army is letting hundreds of settlers committing vandalism and acts of terror. Around 20 houses and other properties have been burned and damaged in the city, and the army is looking and watching and not taking any action. This shows again that how the Israeli army is insensitive to any damage that is committed to the Palestinian side. They are very sensitive to damage committed to the Israeli side.
Mr. Sinijlawi, we'll put a stop right here and obviously pick it up in a split second. Dr. Esmaeel, your 30 seconds are on.
Well, to answer this question, I feel like I live in two realities, two parallel realities that shall never meet. One of them is the language that came out of the summit that seems like the ordinary, regular, like the same kind of language we've heard the last 20-something years. But on the other hand, you have a government whose whole signature idea during the campaign was going really crazy tough on the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinians in general. So frankly, I don't know what's going to happen. I'll be really honest with you.
Okay, last but not least, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, your take?
My take is that I'd like to remind everybody that this ongoing wave of violence didn't start with the current government. It started more than a year ago with the previous government, which was comprised, amongst others, of Muslim members of parliament, of Knesset as well. So I'd like to put that into proportion and to remind everybody that we are not talking about any kind of response to an Israeli government, but about acts of barbaric terrorism against civilians, which should be rejected first and foremost by the Palestinian Authority.
And before we get to the Palestinian side, let's feel free to interact from this point onwards, of course. The outcome of the summit, at least according to Jordan, an Israeli agreement to halt all settlement activities. Israeli officials are already saying this evening, no way, Jose. So is settlement expansion the answer, so to speak, to terrorism, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus?
So I deal less with that. What I would like to focus on is what I find missing from the Aqaba summit is first of all a condemnation of this very recent brutal and murderous attack. And I think that any statement coming out of Aqaba by the Palestinians, the Egyptians, the Americans, and the Jordanians should have started with, we condemn this vile act of terror, and we think it shouldn't be, and it is not our way, and we call on everybody to stop the violence. Another thing which I think should be clearly said is that the Palestinian Authority needs to make up its mind whether it wants to continue to exist and if it wants to actually implement its area of responsibility security-wise in Area A. As long as they don't, we will continue to see these types of attacks emanating from areas where the Palestinian Authority has lost control.
So did the PA lose control over the West Bank, Mr. Sinijlawi?
Well, definitely. Abbas lost control in the West Bank longer. What's keeping him in power is that the Shin Bet simply continued running a show, running some show that is not relevant to the reality. He's totally detached from the Palestinian state. Nobody respects him. The participation of the Palestinians in the meeting today was condemned wall to wall from all political factions, even from within Fatah, the Fatah that is loyal to Abbas, because 80% of Fatah is no more loyal to Abbas and is asking him to go home. This summit is its only intention is to push the Palestinian Authority to make, on behalf of Israeli, some security actions and operations. The current security coordination include intelligence cooperation. Now the Israeli army says, well, we want to delegate you to do the operation inside area. And they were pushing the authority despite the fact that it is very weak, and despite the fact that now there will be more pressure from the street on the PA. What the security strategy, the Israeli security strategy now is simply weakening the PA and strengthening Hamas. While they are claiming that we are trying to strengthen the PA and Hamas, but they are doing the opposite.
Dr. Esmaeel, considering what we've just heard from Mr. Sinijlawi, that the PA is losing its legitimacy, at least to an extent, should or can Israel fill this leadership void in the West Bank?
Israel fill the leadership void?
No, fill the void. Fill the void in terms of the security due to the lack of Palestinian leadership there.
Hey, we could. I mean, we used to have during the first Intifada, we used to have something like 7 or 8 divisions inside the West Bank. Not that it the Intifada or anything. So we can try and tell the Israeli people that this is what we're going back to. Yeah, of course, you can always mobilize more reserve and reserves and bring them into the force. And instead of having like something like a division and a half, 2 divisions, end up with 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 10 divisions. That's the whole army in there. We could. I guess we could. I mean, that is the question: is this what we want to do?
Yeah.
The whole idea of signing agreements with the PLO at the time and doing these kind of things is exactly not so that Israel doesn't have to do that. That the Palestinian forces will take care of their own cities, and that there will be no more need for this high level of mobilization, which has an enormous effect on the economy, on the society, on the politics of the country. So many things are possible, but there's always this pesky thing with numbers. There's always this something called, we live in a world of trade-offs. When you do something, it always comes at the expense of something else. Clearly, we don't want that. We do not want to now mobilize 70, 80,000 reserves to be able to maintain something instead of the Palestinian Authority. I'm just think how much it will cost. Think how many lives will be lost. Think about the fact, okay, what's the future of that?
So what is the future
of that? For a week, for a month, that's no future. I mean, so you hold it for a week, for a month, for a year, and then what? In the end, you will have to give it away to somebody. I mean, there's no way you can do it forever. So the question is, when people are so happy to discredit the Palestinian Authority, whether it is from inside the Palestinian street or inside the Israeli political street, think, what is it? Please tell us what is your alternative that is better, or at least not as bad as.
So, Mr. Sinijlawi, what is better?
Well, better is we need a political exit to this conflict. You cannot treat this conflict with only security strategies. Well, I agree that you can control the threat of Hamas missiles from Gaza through the Iron Dome, but you cannot buy an Iron Dome for each Palestinian that decides in the same moment to take a knife or a gun that he can buy in 1,000 shekel now, a local-made gun, or drive a car or pick up a knife at the age of 12 or 13 and go and attack Israelis. There is no security or military solution to this. The only solution is political. The Palestinian people is looking for dignity, for rights. And he has been waiting 60 years. And it's time that the Israelis make compromises and decide how they want to live with Palestinians. 7 million Palestinians share the same land with 7 million Jews.
Yeah.
Do you want separation or do you want one state? We need to decide on this urgently. No other summits, not even if Biden moves the White House and settles down in Jerusalem. Nothing will help. No kind of diplomatic effort can de-escalate the situation as far as there is no justice for Palestinians. That's how millions of Palestinians feel. They feel they are under occupation. They feel that they don't have rights. And the only result for them, since they don't have diplomatic tools to affect those who decide on them, they resort to violence.
Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, Mr. Sinijlawi is saying no solution other than a long-lasting diplomatic one. But meanwhile, we're seeing a months-long counterterrorism campaign in the West Bank. Can we say it is a success? Can we deem it failure? How should we see it with attacks still taking place day in, day out?
Yeah, I agree with a lot, actually, of the statements made by the previous speaker, but there are also so many falsehoods in what he just said. And the main thing being that it totally takes out of consideration Palestinian agency and responsibility for themselves. The global community has been pumping money, aid, personnel, and weapons into this entity called the Palestinian Authority. And what do we get in response? We get education for hatred. We get state or organizational funded terrorism. We get pay for slay and support for convicted terrorists by stipends paid for by the international community out of the PA budget. Instead of doing good for Palestinian society, they are paying terrorists. And I have no doubt that once the terrorist who committed today's act of terror against Israeli civilians, once he will be either killed or put in jail, his family will receive stipends as well. So I ask, how are we even supposed to get to some kind of political situation if the setting on the ground is one where the Palestinian Authority continues to be a sponsor of terrorism?
Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserve Jonathan Conricus, Dr. Fadi, Esmaeel, and Sinijlawi. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're obviously staying on topic as well. But first, 24 News correspondent Nicole Sadek is at the Tapur Junction in the West Bank, bringing us more on the Israeli aftermath, again, against the backdrop of yet another deadly terror attack there.
Very high tensions and increased security here at the Tapur Junction in response to that terrorist attack that killed 2 Israelis in Hawara. Now, unfortunately, increased tensions and increased security is nothing new for this area surrounding the West Bank region. But unlike before, when the Israeli military and Israeli politicians have really increased security, done checkpoints to try and halt these terror attacks, now Israeli politicians might be taking it one step further by approving the death penalty for terrorists. That approval came just mere hours after the latest terrorist attack at the Hawara earlier today. And so with this increased step, taking it really one step further, in addition to just house demolitions and patrolling, now they're taking it one step further, not only with possibly the death penalty, but also people, there are now calls for more offensive attacks rather than defensive attacks, as people really want to see an end to the violence in the area that has really just been increasing for several weeks, several months now.
So let's get to it. Can terror be prevented? Another quick fire round, and we'll pick it up from there. Dr. Esmaeel, please take the lead.
Well, the short answer is yes. The long answer is depends. Yes, of course, on a tactical operation level, we do it every hour of every day. Not only here, all over the world. There is plenty of experience in stopping or this foiling attacks. Or you can call them terrorists or whatever you want. But we do that. We can. But the longer range, in the long term, can we really stop the whole phenomenon? And that's where the defense comes in, and we can develop that point.
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, your take?
Well, I think that unfortunately Israel is amongst the world leaders in successfully combating terrorism, because we have been facing it for, depending on how you count, but at least 75 years. I hope that we won't have to commit our best men and women to do so in the future. And I hope that we will be able to focus our resources on nation building, on energy, agriculture, high tech, etc. But until that day comes, we have to continue to fight for ourselves and defend ourselves. I hope for a political solution, but until it happens, we must continue to defend ourselves.
Sinijlawi, your thoughts?
Well, how long can you continue pretending as if there is no political problem? As if there
As
are
long
no
as it takes.
millions, as if there are no millions of Palestinians who are denied rights, as if there are no sufferers on the other side, as if there is no occupation, as if there is no aggression. What do you call killing 11 Palestinians inside the city of Nablus? Is it an act of humanity? Is this was something noble to do? Going to attack or to try to arrest 2 people, and then you have collective damage of killing another 9 people, including elderly people at the age of 74 and kids. The occupation needs to end, and then the suffer on both sides will end. That's it. And the ball is in the court of the Israeli side.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, you wanted to reply.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very shallow depiction, and I wish it was that simple, but I think both of us know and the viewers know that it isn't as simple, and that there are so many more layers. There were attacks against Jews in the land of Israel when it was still called Palestine, under the British rule and under the Turkish, and Arab mobs have been killing Israelis and Jews long before that. So I don't think it started with what the distinguished guest calls the occupation. And I don't think that it will end with some type of Israeli withdrawal. It will end when both the nations and their leaders come to the fact that we are here. We will have to coexist, but we have to coexist while basing ourselves on mutual respect and coexistence, and respecting the fact that the others have a right to this country. And I say this specifically to the Palestinians because up until this day, I at least, maybe I'm wrong, haven't heard a clear statement by a Palestinian leader with authority saying, yes, I accept the fact that the Jews are here and they are eligible to live in safety and security besides us. Once I'll hear that, then there will be more weight to the arguments made by the esteemed colleague next to me.
Well, if you allow me, please.
Please, Mr.
I am a Fatah activist. I was Fatah since the age of 15. I was in prison for 5 years. I worked closely with Marwan Barghouti. I am now in charge of the international Israeli and diplomatic relations for the Fatah shadow leadership. So I come from mainstream. I come from Fatah, and I will tell you, we recognize the historical rights of Jews in this country, full stop. Yet you have never been alone here. There was always others, and others is us. Now it's your turn to recognize my equal historical rights in this land. We need to share this land together. There is no exclusivity for any side over the other side. There is no one better right to the other. We have equal historical rights to this land, and since we have this common history, we can find a common future. But we need to be recognized by you as worthy to these rights, as equal to you. And we can accept this recognition on 2 levels. Either you can say, we will give you the right to self-determination, we are here, you are there, this is the line, or we accept you as equal citizens. I am living in what is claimed to be the unified capital, eternal capital of Israel. I was born here, and I am not a citizen. I don't have rights. I don't have any power over the system that continuously, most powerfully, decides every single detail of my life. Until when? I am now 50 years old. I will die soon. And I will live my whole life under occupation, not seen as an equal individual in this country, in this system. So, and there are generations like me who are born without any hope. We are the only nation on earth that are sure that tomorrow is worse than today. And this lack of hope is creating violence, is pushing our kids towards violence. Unfortunately, it's very sad for me to see that the killed and the killing and the killer and the killed are boys from both sides.
Right.
This is very sad.
So, Dr. Esmaeel, we're all listening to Mr. Sinijlawi now. Will it be too naive to see the Aqaba summit as some sort of a beginning, perhaps, for renewed contacts between Jerusalem and Ramallah?
Again, I told you, this is a parallel universes.
Yeah.
They talk in a certain way in Aqaba. Now we have Mr. Sinijlawi there, gives us this diatribe that I cannot see this diatribe sitting well with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and Netanyahu and who else they have there, Levin, and those guys. They will never accept this, what you've just described, Mr. Sinijlawi. That's the truth of it. And in fact, if you ask me, is it well, yeah, in writing it looks beautiful, but where is on the ground? Where is the force that will make it happen in the real world? I don't know that this force exists on the ground. It did in the 90s. We had a moment like that right after the signature of the Oslo Accord, and actually the best moment was after the first elections in the Palestinian Authority, the very first ones. The support for the common future, like Mr. Sinijlawi has just talked about, reached in the upper 80% in the Israeli public and the upper 90% in the Palestinian public. But since then, everything, we know the history, we know what happened, and everything went away. Yeah. Now there are new generations, demographics has changed. There's new generations that have to be re-educated to this way of thinking. And, I hope that this beautiful vision of coexistence will happen, but I don't think that I will see it in my lifetime, unfortunately.
Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, in the 10 seconds we have left, your concluding remarks, perhaps a silver lining, if possible?
Yeah. 4 Israeli prime ministers from different parties have offered the Palestinians to end the conflict, and all 4 of them have come back with empty hands. So except for the rhetoric, I can feel the authenticity of what the Palestinian speaker said, but I don't think that it is real.